My name is James Graves, and welcome to another edition of Night Journey Rewind. I got turned on to this brother, my friend Eric Wyatt. Said, man, you need to check this cat out, this drummer out, man. He sent me the CD. I enjoyed the CD, and I said, well, you know what? It's time to sit down and have a conversation so everybody else can know who this drummer is. His name is Chris Beck, and I have him on the phone. He's in New York, out of Philly. Doing? Welcome to the show.
Great, brother. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All right, brother. What we need to do, we need to start off by going down memory lane. How did it start for you musically?
How did it start for me musically? Well, I grew up in a musical family. I'm a third generation musician on my, from my dad's side. But basically, music was always around in my house growing up. My father was a bass player for the legendary Dixie Hummingbirds, a legendary gospel group. Mm-hmm. And then after that, he moved away from playing and started focusing more on the production side of things, which he worked during that time. He was working for Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff for their gospel division. Oh, yeah. Okay. So music has always played a huge role in my life. So, I saw it all the time growing up. And like I said, being as though my dad was heavily involved, as a kid, I would get to go to, the recording studios with my father and meet people like Clarence Fountain from the Five Blind Boys of Alabama, Verdine White, bass player from Earth, Wind & Fire. A lot of different people in the music And, during that time, I didn't know who they were. But, as time moved on, I got older and really devoted myself to the music. I came to understand who these people were and what they meant to music. So, but in terms of where I actually started, I started singing in church. Once I started learning how to sing and, I started playing the drums in church when I was 7 years old. Then I decided, I wanted to get some instruction. So I actually worked a little summer job, and, my parents helped me pay for private lessons. So I had my first professional drum lesson at around, how old was I? I had to be about maybe 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how the drums started. And as far as jazz is concerned, I kind of started jazz late, I would say. I was in 11th grade, jazz music, and my first record that I listened to was John Coltrane, Blue Train. And it was the song Moment's Notice that came on, and my band teacher told me, "Oh, this is John Coltrane," and that was it, man. I was in love from that record, and just never stopped ever since. So that's basically, in a nutshell, how music started for me.
Question for you. What gravitated you to the drums?
To be honest, my first instrument was the trombone, but I quit very soon, like 2 weeks after having to carry it around. A lot of my friends would make fun of me because, it was a huge change. So, during that time, I wasn't really diligent about practicing, so it was kind of difficult. And then, when you play a wind instrument, your lips start to feel funny. So I wasn't really enjoying the whole, carrying a large case around and having my lips buzz, so
I hear you, man.
So,
I hear you.
Yeah, but when I first got the instrument, when I first signed up for the trombone, the reason why I got the trombone, because there was no more snare drums available at the school I went at the time. So that was like the second option. It was like, okay, we don't have any snare drums, so you can play this trombone. So I dabbled with it for a little bit, but it was like 2 weeks, man. And then I was like, you know what? This isn't for me. But the drum set, like I said, it started for me in church, and I would always on the drums in church and try to play throughout the service. But during that time, I couldn't keep a steady beat. So I remember that was the first challenge. People, they would like bring the older drummers up and get me off the drums, and that stuck with me. And I was like determined. I said, one day I'm gonna play a whole service. And that day finally came, and then that the rest is history. That's when it all started.
What was it about the drums that you love so much?
The drums, it was the rhythm, the ability to make a person dance. Once I discovered that instrument and realized the power that instrument has, I just gravitated toward the drums because, the drums speak in a way that no other instrument does. So that was it. It was a pretty easy switch for me.
I heard that. My name is James Graves. This is Night Journey Rewind, and we're visiting with drummer Chris Beck. Now, coming out of Philly, there's a lot of great musicians out there in both fields, in R&B and in jazz. You said when you heard Train, the album Blue Train, and I just like, okay.
Yeah, when I first heard that record, I mean, my knowledge of jazz, I didn't know anything about the music, but it was something about the Train sound, John Coltrane sound. When I heard it, it felt like, you know, there was someone like crying out through his horn, like, you know, so that was my introduction to the music. And my teacher at the time, my high school teacher, he really encouraged me to try to learn different solos. So during that time, I started transcribing, first just by, you know, singing what I heard, and then eventually trying to put it on paper. But, you know, even though I didn't get to complete the transcription of Train, it's very hard to transcribe, but I'll never forget that moment when I heard that and I was able to at least start to sing some of his solo back. And I realized that this is a language. He's basically speaking a language, you know, and this music is universal. It's something that can be appreciated all over the world, no matter what color you are, no matter what political beliefs you may have. You know, it's universal and it can speak to your very soul. I can't explain it, but it was just a feeling that I felt, and I realized that I needed more of that.
You know, you're not the first person that a lot of times can't really explain that feeling. You just got that feeling. It's one of those feelings that you can't really describe at all. And Train seems to have that type of effect on us. It took a little while for me to really understand, because when I first heard Train, I said, oh man, what is he doing? And after a while, in researching, after a while, listening, and then listening to other composers, Miles, Lee Morgan, the list goes on, then I started understanding what's going on with the music. Then when I really got back to listening to Train later on, it was just at a whole nother level at that time.
Yeah.
Whole nother level.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You got hooked. So what did you do to put yourself in a position to be called, you know, you're a very diverse drummer, but to really focus a lot on being a jazz drummer, especially when there's so many different styles, the hard swings, the sit backs?
Yeah. Well, you know, I decided, like I said, in my junior year of high school, that I was going to make this a career choice. And I ran into a few issues just because, you know, during that time, I mean, I read music, but my reading wasn't that great. And, you know, I had one more year of high school before college started, and I needed to, you know, start my audition process. So being as though my reading wasn't the best, and, you know, I had to take these auditions on and do some classical repertoire. So during that time, I actually hired an outside teacher. So I was studying at my actual high school, and then another teacher outside of the school. And basically they got me to a point where I could sight read fairly okay, enough to get through the audition. But basically I applied to Temple University, and I applied to a bunch of other schools. I ended up going to Temple for music education and with a jazz component. So I took like the first 2 years of classical studies, and after the first 2 years, we switched to jazz studies, and that's when I met the wonderful Mr. Terrell Stafford. He was my teacher at Temple, and there I got to play in Temple University's big band and small group ensembles. So we started to do a little traveling, then we actually recorded a record, and then I said, you know what, I'm going to stick with this, you know. And during that time, there was a great venue in Philadelphia called Ortlieb's Jazz House, and that's where the lovely Mickey Roker, Shirley Scott, Arthur Harper, the list goes on, of great musicians that came through that place. So during that time at Temple, I would basically go there and sit in at jam sessions, and I started playing certain gigs around town. And after a while, they would call me and say, hey, I would get called, you know, to play on weekends with Robert Bootsy Barnes and Sid Simmons, a great piano player. He passed about maybe 5-6 years ago. So basically that's where it started for me. And then I started playing around town. And then in 2006, I decided I'm going to leave for New York City. My teacher, Mr. Michael Carvin, and that's how it all started, man. That's basically how I got to where I am now.
Wow.
Yeah.
I hear you. My name is James Graves. This is Night Journey Rewind, and we're visiting with drummer Chris Beck. To move ahead a little bit, man, there's a lot that we could sit down and really chop it up. But you got out there, your name started getting around. Started off in Philly, then you said, okay, it's time for me to go to the Apple. But man, I've noticed you've performed with so many cats. Cyrus Chestnut, Oliver Lakes, Coy Tyner, even
Yes.
Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, man.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Mo,
sir.
my good friend Mo Glumilla, God bless him.
God bless him.
Harold Mayburn, James Spalding. Had a great conversation with James Spalding. And then some cats, man, that just are bad MFs, like, Nicholas Payton, Roy Hargrove, and the list goes on, man. I mean, man, that's a great group of cats that you're playing with. You've been so blessed.
Yeah.
How did that get?
Yes, sir. Well, I have to admit, like, when I first started playing in Philly, I was blessed to play with Tim Warfield, a great tenor saxophone player. He's from York, PA, but, he spent time in New York. So after playing with Tim Warfield and Carol Stafford together, I would basically come to meet Cyrus Chestnut. I would come to meet Nicholas Payton. And that's how I played with those guys. I played with them in Tim's band. Like, Tim would have a concert or something, and just so happened these great musicians were on the bandstand. So I'm really blessed and fortunate to say, like, throughout all these experiences, I've had great mentors to help me along the way. All these guys that I've been fortunate enough to play with, they've always been honest and just told me the things I need to work on, the things I need to focus on, and the things to focus on in terms of the music, being positive, knowing how to show up on time and take care of the music, So I feel really fortunate. As far as playing with Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, I actually had my audition to play in her band was at B.B. King's in New York City. So, the pressure was on, man. And I'm just so blessed that I had these opportunities, and it's made me into the musician I am today. I'm just grateful, man. I'm just so thankful and so grateful. Even though I'm still young, had a lot of experiences. Played also with Rufus Reed, great Rufus Reed. So, as I get older and, I look over the list of people that I play with, I realize a lot of these people are like masters, they're like, they've been out here a while. So I am really, really thankful of the education I received coming up. And I look forward to continuing this legacy.
You're absolutely right. When you're talking about people like McCoy Tyner, when you're talking about people like Billy Harper, Curtis Fuller, James Spalding, Harold Mayburn, Charles Fambraught, these cats have been around for a while. And, Charles Fambraught is, younger than Harold Mayburn and James Spalding, but still he's been around. Then, like I said, the late Mulgrew Miller, to me, that was the second coming of McCoy Tyner.
Yes, sir.
I don't think there's nobody. Well, there is this cat now, man, Benito Gonzalez.
Yes. He's also a friend of mine, yeah.
That boy,
he's
that
a good
boy is
musician.
woo,
He's bad.
Yeah, that boy is bad. You've been blessed to play around with cats that are so diligent and sit down and tell you, say, hey, man, A, B, C, and D will get you to A, B, C, and D. That's a good thing.
Yes, sir.
My name is James Graves. This is Night Journey Rewind, and we're visiting with drummer Chris Beck. You got a project out. It's called The Journey. Take us on a journey.
Sir.
Talk about it.
Well, the journey started, man. I don't know if you got to read. Journey started about 8 years ago when I decided. During that time, I had completed my graduate studies at Rutgers University, and at the time, I got really serious about composition. And during that time, I was at Rutgers, but I was also doing a private study with Stanley Cowell. So during that time, I really devoted a lot of time to writing and just becoming a little bit more familiar with harmony and counterpoint and all that. I didn't know that I would put out this record 7, 8 years later, but the music, I started working on the music even then, not knowing that this album would eventually come out 8 years later. But this album is basically like a family gathering. I'm basically paying homage to some relatives that had passed on. More importantly, my son. I lost my son, firstborn son. This year will make it 3 years that he's been gone. But I lost him to a terrible accident, and the music spoke to me, and some of these songs I had already written, and I just wasn't sure when it was time to release the material.
Right.
But this music was basically speaking to me while all of this stuff was going on, and it basically confirmed that it was time for this music to be out. So basically, a dedication to people that I love that I have either passed on, loved ones, or people that are in my life that are like close friends and mentors. So the song Waiting for Aiden is about my son, obviously, and the song that I did, that I wrote entitled My Inner Circle, that's a song dedicated to all my closest friends and people that really know me as a person, as a musician, father. So it's just a combination of thankfulness to all these people in my life. So that's basically how the journey started, man. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done and the response that it's getting.
Well, first of all, condolence to you and the family for the loss. Even though it's been 3 years, it's always going to be a part for the rest of your life.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Eric Wheeler, man, busy bass player. You're fortunate to get him on your album along with Terrell Stafford, Stacy Dillard on tenor sax, and Anthony Wanzi on piano. Sounds like it's a great lineup, man. I mean, few that I've heard before. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, Eric, he's like one of my best friends. I've been fortunate, very, very fortunate. I played with Eric. It's going on about 13, 14, maybe 15 years. I've been playing rhythm section in different groups, but we played 8 years with Tim Warfield, the tenor saxophone player that I was telling you about. So I spent a lot of time playing with Eric. So when it was time for me to put this music together for this album, it was a question in my mind who would be playing bass. Eric, I mean, he's a great bass player. He's also a leader in his own right, and I also play with him now with the great Cyrus Chestnut. So Eric and I, we go back a long time, and that's my brother. That's my man. I love him dearly.
It's interesting. Cyrus Chestnut, I did an interview with Cyrus Chestnut years ago when he was playing with Terrence Blanchard and Donald Harrison. But man, this is a great project. I enjoy it.
Glad you enjoyed it. Now,
if people who want to get a hold of you, get in touch with you, or want to pick up the CD, how can they do that?
Well, if they would like to pick up the CD, you can. It's available on cdbaby.com. It's also available on iTunes. But you can actually get hard copies from cdbaby.com, or you can go to my website and inquire. My website is cbeckmusic.com, like just the letter C, beckmusic.com. And if you like, a personalized copy, you can just send me a note there and I will get it to you. But it's on iTunes and it's on CD Baby and Amazon.com. So all those three companies, you can find my record.
Well, congratulations to you, man. It's a great project.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I appreciate you agreeing to do this. It's a little late on my end, but I appreciate it.
Hey, man, well, I appreciate that you're able to do it at a short notice. That's really, thank you for that.
No, it's all good. I appreciate everything, man.
My name is James Graves, and this is Night Journey Rewind. Just got finished having a very great conversation with drummer Chris Beck. He has a new CD, his debut CD out called The Journey. It's definitely one that you should put in your collection, your library collection. Brother, thank you so much for your time. I hope this is the beginning of a great friendship, and let's stay in touch.
Yes, sir. Will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Night Journey Rewind. You can follow us on Facebook, Night Journey Rewind, on Twitter, Graves1952, Instagram, GravesNJR. Also, Night Journey Rewind is looking for sponsors to help support this international podcast. Do you want to help promote, educate, inform about this great American classical art form? Hey, won't you go to nightjourneyrewind.com, click on sponsorship and take a look at it. Email me. Let's talk about it, man. Let's support this music. Support what you got going on. Email me at kwasef@gmail.com. That's KAWSEFF@gmail.com. Once again, go to nightjourneyrewind.com, click on sponsorship, hit me up. Let's talk about it, man. Let's keep this great American classical art form going. I love doing this. These cats love being on the air. They love talking about this music. I need your help. I'm reaching out to you, my fans. Hit me up at kwasef@gmail.com. KAWSEFF@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for your support.